In the synthetic Dreamscape battlefield, the air smelled of burnt ozone and bad decisions. Commander Ivan glanced at the holographic interface projecting starships like angry fireflies. He scratched his chin, more out of disbelief than an itch. "Well, this is a clusterfuck, isn't it?" he said, his voice laced with the kind of humor reserved for funerals and tax season. Lieutenant Rix, standing next to him, snorted. "You could say that. The Galactic Council's about as subtle as a sledgehammer in a glass museum." Ivan leaned forward, tapping the screen with an accusatory finger. "We knew they'd play dirty, but cutting off our resources. That's like kicking a puppy and then blaming it for bleeding on your shoes." Rix shrugged. "Puppy didn't pay its galactic taxes. Or maybe it just pissed off someone with a bigger stick," Ivan mused, eyes narrowing at the display. The Dreamscape was a marvel of technology, a virtual playground where tactics could be simulated without the messy inconvenience of actual bloodshed, at least for now. Earth's leaders were supposed to convene here, right in the heart of Ivan's imaginary war zone. Because nothing screams, "We're serious," like discussing your impending doom in a landscape that looks like a teenager's idea of a cool video game. Ivan waved a hand, dismissing a cluster of hypothetical enemy ships. "We'll be hosting a strategy meeting soon. Hope they've got good catering." Rick snickered. The fate of humanity decided over stale coffee and cold sandwiches. "It's a living," Ivan grunted. He turned from the interface, gesturing to the seats forming in the ether, each a throne for Earth's finest minds, or at least those who could be bothered. The first to appear was President Mallory, looking more like a disillusioned accountant than the leader of Earth. "I hope you've got a plan, Ivan," she said, her tone as dry as the Martian desert. Ivan shrugged. "Plan A is, don't die. Plan B, well, we're currently downloading it." "Wonderful," Mallory sighed, taking a seat. "Remind me why we put you in charge again." "Because I'm too stubborn to quit and too dumb to know when I'm outmatched," Ivan replied, flashing a grin that could charitably be called devil may care. As more officials materialized into the Dreamscape, the air grew thick with the scent of cologne and desperation. There was Dr. Kessler, head of Earth's scientific community, and Vice Admiral Davies, a woman who could make a black hole feel inadequate. Kessler adjusted his glasses, looking around. "Interesting decor, Commander. Did you model this after your last therapy session?" Ivan chuckled. "Only the color scheme." Davies crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair. "So, we're sanctioned, cut off, and possibly on the brink of invasion. What's the silver lining?" Ivan opened his mouth, then paused. "Well, at least we don't have any intergalactic traffic jams to worry about." Rix leaned in, whispering, "Maybe mention the part where we're not dead yet." "Right," Ivan continued, "and we're not dead yet. See, progress." Mallory rolled her eyes. "We need options, not optimism." Kessler nodded. "The Galactic Council's sanctions are thorough. They've blocked everything short of our own stubbornness." Davies smirked. "Good thing we have that in spades." The holographic display shifted, revealing the sprawl of the Galactic Council's fleet. An assortment of ships as varied as a drunk's excuses. They loomed over the Dreamscape, shadows of potential ruin. "Right now," Ivan said, "our best bet is to regroup, assess, and ready ourselves for what might come next." "Which is?" Mallory pressed. "Hopefully not a planetary barbecue," Ivan deadpanned. Kessler shook his head. "Galactic diplomacy never was our strong suit. How do you negotiate with a council that sees you as a footnote in history?" Davies asked, not really expecting an answer. "Very carefully," Ivan said. "And maybe with a bit more groveling than I'd like." The meeting continued, a blend of clashing ideas and rising tempers, all underscored by the uncomfortable knowledge that Earth's survival was a shaky proposition at best. Finally, Mallory stood, smoothing her suit like it was some magical armor against reality. "We need to prepare for the worst and hope for the, well, slightly less worst." Ivan nodded. "I'll keep the Dreamscape warm in case we need another round of this delightful banter." As the leaders faded from the virtual space, leaving only Ivan and Rix, the commander let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Think they'll pull it off?" Rix asked, hands shoved in his pockets. "I think," Ivan replied, eyes fixed on the now empty seats, "that we're about to find out just how creative desperation can make us." Rix laughed, a bitter edge to the sound. "And here I thought we were already experts." Ivan smiled grimly. "Always room for improvement, Lieutenant. Always room for improvement." In the silent aftermath, Ivan considered the odds stacked against them, a cosmic deck of cards dealt by a particularly spiteful dealer. The Galactic Council had made their move, and now Earth had to respond with more than just bravado and empty threats. As the Dreamscape dissolved into the familiar, sterile reality of the command center, Ivan's resolve hardened like old coffee left on a burner. They had to be better, smarter. Because if they weren't, the galaxy wouldn't remember Earth for its resilience, but for its stubborn, fiery end. And that, as far as epitaphs go, left much to be desired. Ivan rubbed his temples as if trying to massage some semblance of a plan out of his beleaguered brain. The command center, now devoid of the virtual grandeur of the Dreamscape, felt as welcoming as a tax audit. The flickering glow of outdated monitors provided the only illumination, casting long shadows that seemed to mock their predicament. Lieutenant Rix stood beside Ivan, fiddling with a datapad. "Well, Commander, it seems our illustrious council has decided we're worth less than a footnote in a history book. Supplies are dwindling faster than my patience at a diplomatic summit." "Fantastic," Ivan muttered, glancing at the displays. "Nothing like being the underfunded heroes of a tragic space opera." The doors slid open with a disgruntled hiss, and two new figures strode in. First was Leora, the tech genius whose mind was as sharp as her tongue. Dressed in a jumpsuit festooned with more tools than a mechanic's wet dream, she was a walking testament to Earth's stubborn refusal to go gentle into that good night. Beside her was Senna, a strategist whose cunning was matched only by her talent for finding the bright side of a black hole. Leora didn't bother with pleasantries. "Heard we're about to be rationing air. I guess I'll skip the deep breaths." Senna offered a wry smile. "Maybe we can trade our charm and good looks for some spare parts, eh?" "Charm's in short supply, as you can see," Ivan retorted, waving a hand around the room. "What have you got for us, Leora?" "I'm working with a system that makes a junkyard look state-of-the-art," Leora said, tapping her temple. "But there's something weird in the Dreamscape's code, like a message hidden in a love letter from the Council." Ivan raised an eyebrow. "A secret admirer? How touching." "More like a creepy stalker," she replied. "It's encrypted, but if I had to guess, it's either a trap or someone's trying to play nice." "Does anyone in the Council even know how to play nice?" Rix asked, skeptical. "Not unless their version of nice involves planetary sieges," Senna quipped, examining the situation board. "But if there is an ally, we need to find out before they change their mind or get discovered." Ivan nodded, considering the options, which was about as satisfying as choosing between a rock and a hard place. "All right, Leora, work your magic. See if you can crack that code before they decide to send us an eviction notice." "On it," Leora said, pulling out her tablet like a gunslinger reaching for a six-shooter. "Rix, make yourself useful and get me some coffee. The kind that looks like engine oil." As Rix sauntered off, Ivan turned to Senna. "What's your take on this? Think we've got a snowball's chance in hell?" Senna shrugged, her eyes scanning the tactical display. "It's a gamble, but since when have we had anything resembling certainty? We need every edge we can get, even if it's a rusty one." The room lapsed into a tense silence, the quiet hum of machinery offering the only soundtrack. Ivan pondered their resources, or lack thereof, realizing they'd have to make do with the cosmic equivalent of duct tape and hope. Rix returned with a mug of suspiciously dark coffee, setting it down with exaggerated care. "Here you go, Leora. Liquid lightning." "Thanks," she mumbled, already lost in a sea of data. Her fingers danced across the screen, eyes darting as she delved deeper into the labyrinthine code of the Dreamscape. Ivan sighed, leaning against the console. "I remember when dream technology was supposed to make life easier, not serve as a playground for political shenanigans." Rix chuckled darkly. "And here we are, trapped in a virtual reality with all the charm of a second-rate theme park." "At least we don't have to worry about souvenir shops," Senna added, a thin smile on her lips. "True enough," Ivan replied. "But we do need to worry about staying alive long enough to figure out if this message is a lifeline or a noose." Hours passed in a blur of caffeine and whispered curses, each minute dragging them closer to a confrontation they weren't sure they could survive. Leora worked tirelessly, her eyes flicking back and forth as she untangled the digital web. Finally, she let out a triumphant grunt. "Got it. There's a message all right. It's from someone using the alias, Nightshade. They're offering information that could help us evade the Council's blockades." Ivan perked up, a flicker of hope kindling within the gloom. "You think it's legit?" "Hard to say," Leora admitted, "but I've traced it back to a node that's part of the Council's network. If it's a trap, it's an elaborate one." Senna considered this. "If it's a genuine offer, it could mean we have a sympathizer. Or someone who sees us as a useful pawn. Either way," Ivan said, "it's a lead we can't afford to ignore. We'll need to make contact, discreetly." "Discreet as a mouse in a cat convention," Rix muttered. "Got any idea how we do that without getting our heads chopped off?" "We'll need a diversion, something to keep the Council's eyes elsewhere while we poke around," Senna suggested. Ivan nodded. "We can stage a false alert at one of the outlying colonies. They're used to us squawking for help over nothing." "Risky," Senna said, "but it could work if we time it right." "Since when have we played it safe?" Ivan asked, a grin cracking his tired features. They set to work, each member of the team playing their part in the unfolding gambit. Leora and Rix cobbled together a faux distress signal, while Senna coordinated with the colony's officials to ensure their cooperation. The plan unfolded with the precision of a well-oiled machine held together by hope and desperation. As the diversion took root, Ivan and his team slipped into the Dreamscape once more, navigating the treacherous digital realm with practiced ease. The virtual landscape shimmered around them, a kaleidoscope of shifting light and shadow that seemed to mock their every move. But Ivan had long ago learned to ignore such distractions. "All right, Nightshade," Ivan murmured to the ether, "let's see what you've got for us." The response came not in words but in a series of encrypted signals, guiding them deeper into the network. Ivan followed the trail, his instincts honed by countless encounters with both friends and foes. Finally, they arrived at a secluded node, a quiet oasis amidst the Dreamscape's chaos. The figure that awaited them was shrouded in shadows, their features obscured by a digital veil. "You're brave to come here," Nightshade said, their voice a smooth blend of mystery and enigma. "Bravery's just stupidity with a better PR team," Ivan replied. "What do you want from us?" "I want to help," Nightshade said, "but help comes with risks. The Council is not as unified as they'd like you to believe. There are those who see the value in your survival. And you're one of them?" Leora asked, skepticism dripping from her words. "Let's just say I've got an interest in seeing you succeed," Nightshade replied. "I can provide you with coordinates to bypass the Council's blockades, but you must promise to use them wisely." Senna folded her arms, studying the shadowy figure. "And what do you get out of this?" "A chance to see the Council's arrogance brought to its knees," Nightshade replied. "And perhaps a new ally in the battles to come." Ivan weighed the offer, his mind a cacophony of doubts and possibilities. "We're not in the habit of making deals without knowing what we're getting into." "You've got little choice," Nightshade said. "But consider this, an ally within the Council is a rare commodity. One that might tip the balance in your favor. Or tip us into a grave," Rix muttered. "But hey, we've faced worse odds." Ivan met Nightshade's gaze, such as it was. "All right, we'll take your offer, but know this. Betray us, and we'll make sure you regret it." Nightshade chuckled softly. "I wouldn't expect anything less." "Good luck, Commander. You'll need it." With that, the figure dissolved into the Dreamscape, leaving the team alone once more amid the sea of light and shadow. Rix let out a low whistle. "Well, that was fun. So, what's the plan now, boss?" Ivan glanced at his team, each member weary but resolved. "We use the coordinates, break the blockade, and show the galaxy what Earth's made of." "And if it all goes south?" Leora asked. "Then we improvise," Senna replied, a fierce glint in her eyes. "We always do." As they returned to reality, Ivan couldn't shake the feeling that they were teetering on the edge of something monumental. Desperation had driven them this far, but it was hope, fleeting and fragile, that would see them through. Ivan cracked a smile, a touch of warmth breaking through the tension. "Well, team, looks like we're about to see just how creative we can get when the chips are down. And if we're lucky," Rix added, "maybe we'll stick it to the Council while we're at it." They shared a moment of camaraderie, a brief respite amidst the gathering storm. In the end, it didn't matter whether they were heroes or fools, just that they were in this together. Because in a universe ruled by power and ambition, that was enough. The synthetic dreamscape was a place where reality felt like a suggestion rather than a rule. In a digital realm that could morph from a serene meadow to a battlefield with a click, things were getting a tad out of hand. Ivan was beginning to suspect that their virtual playground was more like a trap-laden funhouse, but without the fun. "Anyone else feel like we're the rats in a cosmic lab experiment?" Rix muttered, dodging a sudden rain of digital arrows that sprang from the cerulean sky, of all places. "Only every damn day," Ivan replied, ducking as a holographic fireball whizzed past his head. "Someone's got a twisted sense of humor, and I don't think it's us." Leora, fingers dancing over her datapad like a concert pianist trying to outrun an avalanche, was the first to put it into words. "The Dreamscape's reacting like it's got a mind of its own, and it's not happy with us crashing the party." "You think?" Senna shot back, throwing up a defensive shield just in time to block a volley of screaming banshee-like code. "It's like someone gave the Dreamscape the keys and told it to throw a tantrum. Or, more likely," Ivan said, "someone's pulling the strings from behind the curtain. We've got a puppet master, and it's not the friendly neighborhood variety." Leora scowled, continuing to work her digital magic. "I'm tracing back the interference. Whoever's doing this isn't just showing off. They're playing chess while we're stuck on checkers." "Well, I hope they brought snacks," Rix said, grinning despite the chaos. "Because they're going to be here a while if they think they can outlast us." Ivan couldn't help but chuckle at that, though the reality of their situation was no laughing matter. They were pinned down, metaphorically speaking, and the enemy was making damn sure they stayed that way. Think we've got a traitor? Ivan asked, his words a grim slice through the cacophony of sounds. Leora nodded, grim determination etched on her face. Wouldn't be the first time we've had a backstabber in the ranks. I'm going to need to enhance our capabilities if we want a fighting chance. Go on, then, Ivan urged. Pull a rabbit out of that digital hat of yours. With a few deft strokes, she initiated a sequence that made the Dreamscape shiver and warp. I'm going to overwrite some of our protocols, give us a little boost. If there's a mole, we need to outsmart them, not outgun them. Senna, taking a breather, watched the scene unfold with a mixture of awe and trepidation. So, we're playing hack-a-whack a mole with a side of espionage. Lovely. The virtual landscape glitched momentarily, the surroundings fluctuating between a swirling vortex of color and a bleak, grayscale void. It was enough to make Ivan's head spin, and he swore he could hear a digital laugh echoing in the ether. Great, now the Dreamscape's laughing at us, Rix quipped, shaking his head. What's next? A sarcastic toaster. Wouldn't put it past whoever's behind this, Ivan replied. Leora, you good? Yeah, just give me a minute, she said, her focus unwavering. This code's like trying to untangle Christmas lights in zero gravity. Ivan turned to Senna and Rix, his tone a mix of encouragement and grim humor. All right, troops, here's the plan. We keep our heads down, follow Leora's lead, and try not to die. Any objections? None that I've got the energy for, Senna replied, brushing off virtual dust from her uniform. Rix nodded, a grin still firmly in place. As long as we get to throw a wrench in the Council's gears, I'm game. The Dreamscape shimmered again, the digital world rippling like a mirage. Leora's efforts were beginning to bear fruit, and the oppressive weight of the assault eased, if only slightly. There, Leora announced, her voice laced with satisfaction. I've managed to isolate the interference pattern. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, but I've got a lead. Good news for once, Ivan said, relief coloring his voice. Can you track it? Already on it, she replied, nodding at the holographic display that materialized before them. I've tagged the source. We can either confront them or try to bypass their control. Senna rubbed her chin thoughtfully. If we confront them, we risk showing our hand. Bypassing might keep us under the radar longer. Bypass it is, then, Ivan decided, his voice firm. We're not here for a pissing contest. Let's get what we need and get out. As they followed Leora's lead, the Dreamscape grew more cooperative, the chaotic barrage easing into a manageable challenge. The path they blazed was one of cunning, not brute force, a testament to human ingenuity when the chips were down. So, what do you reckon? Rix asked as they maneuvered through the digital labyrinth. Think Nightshade's on our side, or are they just another player in this circus? Could be both, Ivan mused, his eyes scanning the shifting landscape. They might be playing their own game, but if it aligns with ours, we might stand a chance. Or get caught in the crossfire, Senna pointed out, her tone pragmatic. Optimism, Senna, Ivan chided lightly. Remember, you're supposed to be our ray of sunshine. Sorry, I left my pom-poms in my other uniform, she shot back with a smirk. The tension between them lightened, if only momentarily, as they continued their silent march through the digital realm. It was a reminder of what they were fighting for, not just survival, but for each other. Finally, they reached a secluded node, a place untouched by the mayhem that had engulfed them. It felt uncomfortably quiet, like the eye of a storm. This is it, Leora said, her voice low. The source of the interference is just ahead. Ivan took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay beyond. All right, team, let's see who's been jerking our chain. The virtual door opened, revealing a tableau of digital chaos, a room filled with screens, each displaying lines of code that danced in an unending ballet. At the center sat a figure, cloaked in shadows, their features hidden by a cloak of anonymity. Welcome, Commander Ivan, the figure said, their voice smooth and unruffled. I must say, you've been quite entertaining. Glad to oblige, Ivan replied, his tone dry. So, who do I have the pleasure of speaking to? Call me Spectre, the figure replied. Though I doubt names matter much in our little game. Spectre's laugh was a dry, hollow sound that echoed through the room. Come now, Commander, we both know this is more than a game. You're standing on the precipice of something grand. Or something catastrophic, Ivan retorted. Depends on your perspective. Spectre shrugged, the motion fluid and dismissive. Perspective is everything, after all. Leora stepped forward, her datapad clutched tightly. You've been interfering with our operations. Why? Because I can, Spectre replied, their tone almost jovial. But let's not get tangled in petty grievances. I have an offer for you. Another one? Rix muttered under his breath. What's next? Free toasters for everyone. Spectre ignored the jibe, continuing as if Rix hadn't spoken. The Council is not unified, as you well know. I offer you information, a way to turn their discord to your advantage. And in return? Senna asked, suspicion threading through her words. A simple request, Spectre said, their voice smooth as silk. When the time comes, remember who aided you. That's all I ask. Ivan exchanged a glance with his team, the decision weighing heavily on his shoulders. Trusting Spectre was a gamble, one that could either save them or doom them. All right, Spectre, Ivan said finally. We'll take your offer, but if you screw us over, you'll wish you hadn't. Spectre nodded, seemingly satisfied. Wise choice, Commander. I look forward to seeing what you do next. With that, the figure vanished, leaving Ivan and his team alone once more in the Dreamscape's eerie tranquility. Well, that was cozy, Rix quipped, stuffing his hands in his pockets. Think we can trust this Spectre character? About as far as I can throw them, Ivan replied. But it's a lead, and right now, we're fresh out of options. Leora sighed, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. At least we've got something to work with. It's better than wandering blind. Senna nodded, a determined light in her eyes. And we'll make it work. We always do. As they navigated their way back to reality, Ivan felt the weight of their choices settle over him like a shroud. They were playing a dangerous game, one with stakes higher than any of them had ever faced. But as always, they were in it together. And in a universe of shadows and secrets, that was the one constant they could rely on. The command center wasn't what you'd call cutting edge. It was more like cutting corners, with ancient monitors flickering like the ghosts of Christmas past. Ivan surveyed his ragtag bunch, the who's who of, we'll take what we can get. Resources were scarce, morale was lower than a limbo contest in hell, and the Galactic Council had the generous support philosophy of a deadbeat dad. Right, folks, Ivan began, his voice the oral equivalent of a slap on the back. We're going to infiltrate the Dreamscape's core. We're looking for traitors, and I'd bet my last ration bar there's a mole enjoying a luxury cruise on our misery. You'd lose that bet, Rix chimed in, the perpetual underdog in a world of overdogs. Luxury cruises require luxury, and we're fresh out of that. Ivan smirked. Well, then, let's make our own luck. Leora, you've got the tech know-how. Can you get us in? Leora nodded, her fingers flying over the datapad like a pianist on caffeine. I can weave us in, but it's going to be tight. Picture a fat guy squeezing into a spacesuit 2 sizes too small. Charming, Senna said dryly, twirling a digital blade with the ease of someone who's already considered stabbing everyone in the room at least once. I assume we're aiming for subtly here. As subtle as a sledgehammer, Ivan replied. We hit them hard, find our little rat, and get out before the council's babysitters catch on. The plan was as solid as a sandcastle in a tsunami, but that didn't stop Ivan from charging ahead. Let's do this before I start questioning my life choices. Leora worked her magic, and the dreamscape blinked into existence around them. Gone were the pixelated nightmares of their previous skirmish, replaced by a sterile digital corridor. It was the kind of place you'd expect to find an eye-plotting world domination. All right, Ivan said, taking point. Stay close, keep your eyes peeled, and for the love of whatever deity you worship, don't touch anything suspicious. Define suspicious, Rix quipped, adjusting his gear. Anything that looks like it's going to explode, implode, or otherwise remove us from existence, Ivan shot back. They moved as a unit, the kind of ragtag team you'd expect in a low-budget holo film. The corridors twisted and turned, the digital landscape a labyrinthine mess of ones and zeros. Leora's datapad beeped intermittently, a digital compass leading them to their quarry. How's Earth holding up? Senna asked, slicing through the silence. About as well as a sandcastle in a hurricane, Ivan replied grimly. Sanctions are squeezing the life out of the planet. People are getting restless. Civil unrest's about to hit the fan. Great, Rix muttered. We're stuck playing digital hopscotch while Earth burns. Lovely time to be alive. You get used to it, Ivan said. Or you don't, and you find a new career path. Like pushing up daisies, Rix counted, a wry grin on his face. Further into the digital abyss, Leora halted abruptly, her eyes fixed on the datapad. This is it, the core. I'm picking up a lot of interference. It's messy, like someone's been rooting around in here with a sledgehammer. Probably our traitor, Senna said, eyes narrowing. Or they just have really bad housekeeping. Ivan didn't respond, his focus on the shimmering digital walls. All right, folks, let's flush out our little rat. The core opened up before them, a vast digital expanse filled with swirling code and holographic interfaces. It was surprisingly quiet, like the calm before a particularly nasty storm. And then, as if to prove a point, the storm hit. The digital space erupted with activity, jagged lines of code slicing through the air like a particularly angry hive of space bees. Well, isn't this cozy? Ivan said, dodging a volley of data shards. Spread out, let's find our mole. Leora tapped furiously on her datapad, her brow furrowed with concentration. I'm isolating anomalous patterns. Whoever's in here is good, but I'm better. Spoken like a true egomaniac, Rix said, but his voice carried no malice, only admiration. Senna moved with purpose, her digital blade slicing through the code with lethal precision. Don't get cocky, they might be waiting for us. The words were barely out of her mouth when the lights flickered, and a figure materialized in the center of the room. Clad in a cloak of shadows, their face was obscured, but the smugness was almost palpable. Ah, Commander Ivan, the figure said, voice slathered in condescension. I wondered when you'd show your face. Spectre, Ivan said, not bothering to hide his disdain. Nice of you to drop by. Couldn't resist, Spectre replied. Thought I'd give you a sporting chance. How generous, Ivan said, his grip on his weapon tightening. What's your game? Spectre chuckled, the sound bouncing off the digital walls. No game, Commander. Just a little chaos to spice up your day. Well, thanks for the concern, Rix chimed in. But we're doing just fine ruining our own lives. Spectre ignored him, turning instead to Leora. Ah, the tech genius. I've been watching your handiwork. Impressive. Leora rolled her eyes. Save the flattery for someone who cares. Why are you doing this? Because I can, Spectre said, echoing their earlier sentiment. And because it's fun. Senna stepped forward, her expression hard. Enough games. Are you working alone, or is there someone else? Spectre's laugh was a low, sinister thing. Oh, I'm never alone. But that's a secret for another time. Ivan exchanged a glance with his team. We're not leaving without answers, Spectre. Then you're not leaving at all, Spectre replied, and with a flick of their wrist, the digital space erupted into chaos once more. Plan B, Rix shouted, ducking as a wave of code surged towards them. Plan B, Ivan agreed, teeth gritted. Retreat and regroup, we'll deal with this later. They pulled back, Leora covering their exit with a barrage of countercode, her skill a beacon in the digital storm. As the dreamscape faded, Ivan felt the weight of their failure settle on his shoulders. Back in the command center, reality was a harsh slap to the senses. The outdated monitors blinked dully, a reminder of their meager resources and dwindling time. Earth was in chaos, Spectre was still at large, and their traitor remained elusive. Well, that was a bust, Rix said, flopping into a chair with a sigh. Not entirely, Leora said, ever the optimist. We've narrowed down Spectre's influence. It's not much, but it's a start. Not much is the understatement of the century, Senna muttered, crossing her arms. Hey, we're still alive, Ivan said, forcing a grin. I call that a win. Low bar you've set there, Rix said, shaking his head. But I'll take it. Ivan stood, looking at his team with something akin to pride. We'll figure this out. We always do, and when we do, Spectre won't know what hit them. Leora nodded, determination shining in her eyes. Damn right, we'll make them regret ever messing with us. As they regrouped, the weight of the galaxy seemed to rest a little lighter on their shoulders. They were battered, bruised, and beaten, but not broken. And as long as they had each other, that was enough. For now, anyway. The dreamscape was still spinning around them like a malfunctioning carousel when Ivan felt the digital floor dissolve beneath his feet. Gone was the comforting, if chaotic, noise of his team. It was just him now, facing down the grinning spectre of the Spectre. Well, Ivan muttered, this is a pickle. The virtual reality around him twisted and buckled, as if the dreamscape were having a bad day and taking it out on the nearest available commander. Spectre hovered in the air like a particularly irritating fly, cloak billowing dramatically despite the lack of wind. Welcome to your new home, Ivan, Spectre drawled, that smugness ingrained in every syllable. I do hope you like the decor. I spent ages getting the existential dread just right. Ivan rolled his eyes. Could use more cheerful wallpaper. Maybe a motivational poster or two. Hang in there, with a picture of a cat. Spectre chuckled, a sound as pleasant as nails on a chalkboard. Oh, you'll be hanging in there, all right. For as long as I see fit. Back in the command center, the remaining team was regrouping amidst the flickering monitors that looked like they might give up and retire any moment now. Lieutenant Rix was the first to slam his fist on the table, making the data pads jump. Damn it, Leora, Rix snapped, frustration lacing his words like poison. How the hell did we lose Ivan in there? Leora's fingers danced over her datapad, her brow furrowed. The whole system went haywire. We were doing fine until we weren't. It's like someone flipped the chaos switch just for kicks. Senna, ever the pillar of dry sarcasm, sighed. So, we've got a commander trapped in a digital nightmare, a psychopathic hacker playing God, and Earth's looking like it's next on the menu. I love this job. Rix rubbed his temples. We need a plan, people. Ivan's only got so much patience, and my guess is Spectre isn't exactly offering room service. I'll start by patching into the Dreamscape security protocols, Leora said, determination in her voice. We need to understand how Spectre managed to pull this off. The command center's ancient systems groaned under the strain of Leora's fingers, like an old man protesting an early morning jog. Rick paced the room, glancing at the monitors displaying Earth's increasingly grim situation. Protests are ramping up, Rick said, voice a bitter edge. I get that they're angry, but good luck feeding a riot with slogans. Senna twirled her digital blade, eyes narrowing. It's not just hunger. People are scared, and scared people do stupid things. Like trust the wrong side. You think Spectre's got eyes on Earth? Rix asked, his tone sharp. Wouldn't be surprised, Senna replied. Chaos is their thing, remember? And if Earth's a powder keg, a few well-placed sparks could blow it all sky high. They fell into grim silence, the weight of their responsibilities pressing down harder than the command center's outdated ceiling tiles. Leora broke it with a frustrated groan, her datapad displaying an infuriating array of encrypted code. This is going to take time, she admitted. And patience we don't have. Especially not Ivan, Rix quipped, though his heart wasn't in it. He's probably trying to befriend the code by now. Maybe host a tea party. Senna shook her head, her expression soft. He'd find a way to snark his way out of anything. But this, I'm not so sure. Back in the Dreamscape, Ivan's predicament was becoming increasingly dire. Spectre had decided to take the villainous monologue route, which, while predictable, was less than ideal for Ivan's escape plans. See, Commander, Spectre was saying, chaos is my canvas. And you're just a little brushstroke in a much larger masterpiece. I always knew I'd be famous, Ivan deadpanned. But this isn't exactly the gallery opening I had in mind. Spectre smirked, and with a lazy flick of their hand, the digital environment shifted again, plunging Ivan into a landscape of shifting shadows and jagged horizons. It was like a bad trip through a dystopian screensaver. You like it? I call it misery in digital, Spectre said, tone dripping with satisfaction. Very avant-garde, Ivan replied, eyes scanning for any signs of structural weakness. Now, do you mind letting me go? I've got a very important date with not being stuck here. Ah, Ivan, Spectre sighed, as much as I enjoy our little chats, I have bigger plans. But don't worry, I'll leave you with a nice view. The dreamscape shifted again, and Ivan found himself staring at a vast digital representation of Earth, the planet's surface flickering with unrest like a distant lightning storm. Earth's on the brink, Commander, Spectre murmured, every word a twist of the knife. All it needs is a push. You're a real piece of work, you know that. Ivan snapped, anger finally breaking through his facade. And you're a fool, Spectre replied, voice cold and sharp. Trying to save a planet that doesn't want saving. Meanwhile, Leora was working faster than humanly possible, the datapad practically smoking under her fingertips. I think, she said, breathless, I might have found a back door. It's risky, but it could get us back into the dreamscape. Risky how? Rix asked, his skepticism honing in. Think of it as a digital sledgehammer, Leora explained. We break in hard and fast, but it's not subtle. Spectre will know we're coming. Senna shrugged, eyes glinting with a familiar steel. Subtlety's overrated. I say we go in, guns blazing. Rix sighed. And by guns, you mean? Whatever tech wizardry Leora can muster, Senna replied. We get in, find Ivan, and haul ass out before Spectre can retaliate. Leora nodded, though her expression was tense. I'll need a little time to set it up. This isn't exactly standard operating procedure. Nothing about this is standard, Rix muttered, pulling up a chair beside Leora. But then again, we're not exactly standard soldiers. Senna looked at them both, her usual sarcasm muted by the gravity of their situation. We'll get him back, and when we do, Spectre's gonna regret picking this fight. In the dreamscape, Ivan was still playing digital dodgeball with Spectre's traps, his mind racing with every possible escape route. His team's absence was a constant ache, a reminder of what was at stake. Any chance you'd just let me go and call it a day? He asked, dodging another volley of digital daggers. Spectre laughed, a sound devoid of mirth. You've got spirit, Ivan. I'll give you that. But spirit won't save Earth. Maybe not, Ivan replied, but it sure makes for one hell of a fight. Unbeknownst to Ivan, his team was already making their move. Leora finished her preparations, her expression a mix of excitement and dread. We're ready. This is gonna be loud. Good, Rix said, clapping a hand on her shoulder. Let's make some noise. Senna grinned, a fierce light in her eyes. About time we shook things up. As Leora initiated the breach, the command center's monitors flickered and spit sparks, the digital equivalent of a battle cry. They plunged into the dreamscape with a force that would have made a battering ram proud. Spectre's domain trembled, the calm shattered by an onslaught of data and determination. Ivan felt the shift, a presence that was as familiar as it was chaotic. I knew they wouldn't leave me hanging, Ivan muttered, a small smile tugging at his lips. Spectre's expression darkened, their control slipping as Leora's hack tore through the dreamscape like a hurricane. What have you done? Spectre hissed. Something you'll be telling your grandkids about, Ivan replied, taking advantage of the chaos to break free of the spectral chains. The dreamscape was a riot of color and sound, a digital battlefield brought to life by the sheer force of Leora's will. Ivan moved with purpose, guided by the familiar signals of his team's presence. Rix and Senna broke through first, their avatars glowing with the latent energy of Leora's hack. Thought you could use a hand, Rix said, tossing Ivan a digital weapon. Always knew you guys would make it, Ivan said, catching the weapon with a grin. Now, let's teach Spectre why you never mess with our team. Senna's digital blade danced as they converged on Spectre, the hacker's smug veneer cracking under the pressure. You think you've won? Spectre snarled. This is just one battle in a larger war. Maybe, Ivan agreed, advancing with his team. But I've got a secret weapon. And what's that? Spectre sneered. Friends who don't know when to give up, Ivan replied, as they lunged forward, pushing Spectre back. Spectre snarled, their form flickering as they fought to maintain control. I will return, they vowed, their voice echoing as the digital storm consumed them. Not if we see you first, Senna shot back, her blade slicing through Spectre's form, dispersing them into the ether. With Spectre gone, the dreamscape calmed, the chaos subsiding into a peaceful digital hum. Leora's voice crackled through the comms, exhausted but triumphant. We did it, we're clear. Ivan exhaled, relief flooding his system. Good work, team. Let's get the hell out of here. As they regrouped in the physical world, the command center seemed a little less grim, the promise of hope lingering in the air. Earth's troubles were far from over, but for now, they'd bought themselves a little more time. Rix leaned back, a tired smile on his face. Not bad for a bunch of misfits, huh? Not bad at all, Ivan agreed, clapping him on the shoulder. But let's not make a habit of this. Senna chuckled, twirling her blade with renewed energy. Wouldn't dream of it, Commander. The team settled back into their roles, their camaraderie a stark contrast to the uncertainty around them. A storm was still brewing on the horizon, but for now, they were ready to face whatever came next. And in the harsh reality of their universe, sometimes that was all one could ask for. The command center buzzed with the frantic energy of a kicked anthill. Leora's fingers danced across her datapad, the screen flickering with streams of code like a digital waterfall. She squinted at the lines, her mind running faster than a hyperdrive on steroids. Rix hovered over her shoulder, a constant presence of barely contained impatience. Any chance you're about to tell us you've discovered the dreamscape's off switch? Rix asked, running a hand through his hair, which had seen better days. Only if you want the version that comes with fireworks and a catastrophic system failure, Leora replied without looking up. That's a no, then, Rix muttered. Fantastic. Senna was off to the side, her digital blade spinning in her hand like a lethal fidget spinner. Hey, if we're about to send this place up like the 4th of July, I'm all in. Anything to piss Spectre off. Don't tempt me, Leora said. But no, I think I've found something more useful than a self-destruct button. Rix perked up, half sitting on the edge of a console. Useful how? Like, we can pull Ivan out useful, or we've just pissed off Spectre useful? Bit of both, Leora replied, a hint of a grin playing at the corners of her mouth. I found a hidden code, something buried deep in the dreamscape's architecture. It's like Spectre's secret stash of dirty tricks, but I think I can manipulate it. Senna raised an eyebrow, her interest piqued. Manipulate how? Like turning the dreamscape into a virtual spa retreat, or more like giving us control over the environment, Leora explained, her voice carrying the weight of cautious optimism. We can rewrite some of the parameters, maybe even flip the script on Spectre. Finally, some good news, Rix said, clapping his hands together. And here I thought today was going to be all doom and gloom. Leora nodded, her fingers still a blur on the datapad. It's risky, though. We start messing with Spectre's toys, and they're bound to notice. Let them, Senna said, her digital blade slicing the air with a satisfying whoosh. About time we took the fight to them. Rix glanced at the monitors, where a digital representation of Earth flickered like a dying bulb. Spectre's holding the planet hostage, and we're stuck in here playing hacker games. It's the worst kind of chess match. Yeah, but at least we've got the rook now, Leora said, not missing a beat. And a few extra queens if we play our cards right. Chess metaphors, really? Senna asked, smirking. You could just say we're gonna kick Spectre's ass. Right, because subtlety is our strong suit, Leora shot back. I'll get to work on implementing the changes. Just keep your fingers crossed Spectre doesn't decide to crash the party early. Considering our luck, I'd say they're already RSVPing, Rix said wryly. In the Dreamscape, Ivan was doing his best impression of a digital Houdini, slipping through the cracks whenever Spectre's traps came closing in. The latest landscape was a barren wasteland, the kind of place that screamed, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." "Honestly, Spectre, you could really use some new material," Ivan called out, sidestepping a digital landmine. "This whole doom and gloom motif is getting a bit stale." Spectre's voice echoed through the void, dripping with mockery. "Why change what works, Commander? Besides, I thought you enjoyed a good challenge." "Oh, I love a challenge," Ivan replied. "What I don't love is getting my ass handed to me on a digital platter." "Consider it an opportunity to improve," Spectre said, their tone smug. "Yeah, well, I prefer opportunities that don't involve existential threats," Ivan shot back. Just as Spectre was about to retort, a ripple passed through the Dreamscape, subtle but unmistakable. Ivan paused, sensing the familiar touch of his team's handiwork. "Looks like my friends are playing with your toys," Ivan said, a grin splitting his face. "Hope you kept the receipt." Spectre's control faltered, the landscape flickering like a bad holo projection. What are they doing?" "Rewriting the rules, I'd say," Ivan replied, the thrill of the moment cutting through his fatigue. "You might want to hang on to something." The Dreamscape twisted, shadows pulling back to reveal a landscape that was more friendly, or at least less homicidal. Tall, green trees appeared, their leaves rustling with a digital breeze. It was like stepping from a horror simulation into a low-budget nature doc. "Didn't think you'd be one for greenery, Spectre," Ivan taunted, watching the hacker's control unravel. Spectre's voice was strained, laced with anger. "You may have altered the landscape, but you haven't won. Yet," Ivan corrected, savoring the moment. "My money's on, yet." Back in the command center, Leora was pushing the systems to the brink, her every keystroke a calculated risk. The monitors flared with data, a chaotic symphony that was somehow finding its rhythm. "I've got access to the environmental protocols," Leora announced, her voice a mix of triumph and urgency. "We can change things up, keep Spectre on the back foot." "Then let's do it," Rix said, rubbing his hands together. "Turn this place into a nightmare for them." "Already working on it," Leora replied, her fingers flying. "Senna, you might want to start thinking of some creative ways to mess with Spectre." Senna's grin was all teeth. "I've got a few ideas. Just remember, subtle," Rix said with a smirk. "Or, our version of subtle." As Leora's alterations took hold, the Dreamscape shifted again. Ivan found himself in a bustling cityscape, the skyscrapers reaching towards a simulated sky. It was oddly familiar, like a digital homage to a time when Earth wasn't on the brink of chaos. "Nice change of scenery," Ivan said, tapping his comm to reach his team. "What's the plan?" "Keep Spectre occupied," Leora's voice crackled through, tinged with adrenaline. "We're working on isolating their control points." Ivan nodded, surveying the landscape for any signs of Spectre's interference. "Any chance I could get a map?" "Working on it," Leora replied, the sound of furious typing underscoring her words. "For now, just keep doing what you do best." "Which is what, exactly?" Ivan asked, half-jokingly. "Being a pain in Spectre's ass," Senna chimed in. "And speaking of pain, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve." "Color me intrigued," Ivan said, deftly navigating the digital streets. "Just make sure whatever you're planning doesn't backfire." "I've got it under control," Senna assured him, her voice brimming with confidence. Mostly, Spectre was struggling to regain their footing, the Dreamscape slipping further from their grasp. "You think you're clever, Ivan? You think this will matter in the long run?" "I think it will," Ivan replied, dodging a collapsing holographic building. "Especially if it keeps you busy while we figure out how to kick you out for good." "Arrogance will be your downfall," Spectre spat, but their words lacked the usual bite. "Maybe," Ivan conceded, "but it served me pretty well so far." As Ivan led Spectre on a merry chase through the digital city, Leora and the team worked feverishly, each move calculated to maintain their advantage. The command center was a hive of activity, the air thick with concentration and the occasional curse word. "Got it," Leora said suddenly, her face lighting up with triumph. "I've pinpointed the core control hub Spectre's using. We can sever their connection." "Then what are we waiting for?" Rix asked, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards. "Let's cut them off at the knees." "Because it's not that simple," Leora replied, shooting him a cautioning look. "If we're not careful, we could destabilize the whole system. Ivan could get stuck in there for good." "Right," Rix said, deflating slightly. "So, careful's the name of the game?" Like a bull in a china shop, Leora deadpanned, her focus unwavering. "I'll map out a path for Ivan." He needs to hit these points in sequence to disrupt Spectre's hold. Let's hope he's as good at digital hopscotch as dodging bullet trains, Senna said, her humor masking the underlying tension. With a roadmap forming, Ivan received the coordinates and began his journey through the Dreamscape simulated city. Each step was a calculated risk, every corner teeming with potential traps set by Spectre. This is it, Commander, Leora's voice guided him through the comm, a lifeline in the storm. Hit those points and we might just pull this off. Sounds like a plan, Ivan replied, setting his sights on the first hub. Let's see if we can give Spectre a taste of their own medicine. The cityscape morphed around him as he moved, a digital maze designed to confound and ensnare. But with Leora's guidance, Ivan navigated the shifting ground, each step a testament to his resolve. Spectre's presence was a constant shadow, their attempts to regain control growing increasingly desperate. You're playing with forces you don't understand, they warned, their voice reverberating through the digital ether. Ivan chuckled, a dry sound that echoed off the simulated walls. It's what I do best. As he approached the first control hub, the Dreamscape reacted violently, Spectre's desperation manifesting in a gauntlet of digital defenses. But Ivan was undeterred, his focus sharp as a blade. I'm at the first point, he reported, his fingers dancing over the interface. Ready to make some noise? Hit it, Leora replied, her voice a blend of excitement and tension. Ivan activated the control hub, the Dreamscape shuddering with the impact. Spectre's influence wavered, the digital landscape flickering like a faulty neon sign. Nice work, Senna said, her voice laced with approval. One down, a few more to go. Just another day at the office, Ivan quipped, moving towards the next point. As he progressed through the Dreamscape, the team's efforts began to bear fruit. Spectre's control waned with each disruption, the digital realm bending to their will rather than acting as a prison. We're making progress, Leora announced, her relief evident even through the comm. Just one more push and we should have this. Let's finish this, Rick said, his voice a rallying cry. Ivan reached the final control hub, the environment around him crackling with tension. Spectre's presence loomed, a dark cloud determined to smother their victory. You think you can win? Spectre's voice was a snarl, the veneer of control slipping. You're nothing. I'm something, Ivan replied, activating the final hub with a flourish. Something that just cost you control of this nightmare. With the final activation, the Dreamscape convulsed, Spectre's influence severed in a blaze of digital glory. The landscape settled, tranquility replacing chaos as Leora's changes took hold. We did it, Leora exclaimed, her voice bursting with triumph. Ivan, you're clear. Back in the command center, the atmosphere was electric, a tangible sense of victory coursing through the team. They had fought, they had struggled, and against the odds, they had begun to turn the tide. Well, that's a wrap, Rix said, leaning back with a satisfied grin. Not bad for a day's work. Not bad at all, Senna agreed, her blade sheathed with a flourish. Now, let's not do this again anytime soon. Leora exhaled deeply, the weight of the ordeal lifting. I'll drink to that. Ivan's voice crackled through the comm, filled with gratitude and relief. Thanks, team. Couldn't have done it without you. Wouldn't dream of leaving you hanging, Rix replied, his tone warm. As they regrouped, the command center felt less like a war zone and more like home. They had taken a stand, and in doing so the command center buzzed with that peculiar energy found in places where the improbable had just become reality. Or maybe it was just the lack of sleep. Ivan pulled himself out of the wreckage of his chair, stretching his legs as if they'd been through a blender. All right, people, he said, his voice rasping like a rusty hinge. We've given Spectre a digital wedgie. Now let's see if we can't turn that into something useful before the Galactic Council decides we're the ones who need a spanking. Rick snorted, glancing at the monitors. The Council's probably too busy picking lint out of their navels to notice. Or counting their credits, Senna added, her digital blade still humming with residual energy. Can't expect much from a bunch of suits who think risk is a four-letter word. Leora, still glued to her datapad like a ship to its docking station, nodded. We've got them on the ropes, but it's time to figure out who's been helping Spectre from the inside. We need leverage, or we're just a bunch of dogs barking at a moon that doesn't care. Right, Ivan agreed, tapping the console to bring up the latest reports. Let's unravel this knot before it strangles us. Leora's fingers danced across her datapad, conjuring up reams of data that scrolled across the screens like spectral apparitions. I'm cross-referencing Council communications with our intel. If there's a traitor, they've left breadcrumbs. Hopefully, they lead somewhere more interesting than a moldy cupboard. Rix leaned over her shoulder, eyes scanning the data with the hunger of a man who hasn't seen a decent meal in weeks. How many breadcrumbs are we talking? Enough to make a loaf, Leora replied dryly. but it's the stale ones we're after. As they delved deeper, the command center was filled with the symphony of beeping consoles and furious typing, underscored by Rick's steady stream of ever-creative profanity. The pieces were there. They just needed to be assembled into something coherent, preferably before the council found out they were playing jigsaw with their secrets. Here, Leora finally declared, stabbing a finger at the screen. Councillor Varen. He's been cozying up to some less than reputable contacts. Looks like our boy's been playing both sides of the fence. Ivan raised an eyebrow. Varen, the guy who looks like he swallows nails for breakfast. The very one, Leora confirmed. His communications log shows a lot of chatter with parties that match Spectre's known associates. Rick smirked, crossing his arms. Looks like Mr. Nails for breakfast has been dipping his spoon in more than one pot of soup. Time to give our friend a little tap on the shoulder, Ivan said, cracking his knuckles. Senna, how's your shoulder tapping technique? Senna grinned, her blade humming softly in its sheath. I've been known to make a point. While Senna prepared to make contact, Ivan turned his attention to President Mallory, who was seated in a corner of the command center looking like someone had just told her that the universe's supply of whiskey had run dry. Madam President, Ivan began, his tone respectful but laced with a touch of irony. It seems we have a counselor who's been playing puppet master with Spectre. Mallory raised an eyebrow, her expression as dry as a desert. Varen, I presume. Ivan nodded. Looks like he's been hedging his bets. Any advice on how to turn this to our advantage? Mallory sighed, a sound like the wind blowing through dead trees. The council's not going to like this. Varen's got friends in high places. But if we can prove he's been feeding Spectre intel, we might just have enough leverage to make those sanctions disappear. Assuming they don't decide to turn us into a cautionary tale first, Rix added. True, Mallory conceded, her gaze fixed on the middle distance. But if we handle this right, we can force the council to rethink their grip on Earth. They're not above a little realpolitik if it means saving their own skins. Good to know they're consistent, Ivan replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. As the team finalized their plans, Senna slipped away to confront Councillor Varen. It was a delicate operation, requiring the subtlety of a whisper and the force of a freight train. Fortunately, Senna was well versed in both. Varen was holed up in his quarters, surrounded by the trappings of power and privilege. The kind of place that screamed, look at me, I'm important, right down to the unnecessarily large holographic fish tank. You're not supposed to be here, Varen said, his voice oily as a used car salesman. This is a secure area. Then I suggest you secure it better, Senna replied, her smile a wicked slash in the dim light. We need to talk. What is this about? Varen asked, his eyes narrowing like a cat that's just spotted a particularly tasty mouse. Your extracurricular activities, Senna said, leaning casually against the doorframe. Particularly your little tete-a-tetes with folks who aren't exactly on our Christmas card list. Varen's face went through a rapid series of expressions, finally settling on a mask of indignant innocence. I have no idea what you're insinuating. Funny, neither did we at first, Senna replied, her tone conversational. But then we started following the breadcrumbs and, well, here we are. You can't prove anything, Varen blustered, his bravado a paper-thin shield. Maybe, maybe not, Senna shrugged. But we don't need to. We just need the council to think we can. They're not big fans of uncertainty in their ranks. Varen's composure cracked, the veneer of confidence peeling away to reveal the fear beneath. What do you want? Simple, Senna said, her voice turning hard. You're going to help us make the sanctions disappear. And in return, we won't make you disappear. Varen swallowed hard, the reality of his situation settling in like a bad hangover. Fine, I'll do it. Good boy, Senna said, pushing off the doorframe and moving to leave. And Varen, don't try anything stupid. We've got enough on you to make sure that fish tank of yours is the only water you'll see for a long time. Back at the command center, Senna relayed the details of her conversation with Varen. The mood was cautiously optimistic, the kind of feeling you get when you've just defused a bomb but aren't quite sure if it was the only one. So, we've got him? Rix asked, leaning back with the self-satisfaction of a cat who's just caught the canary. Locked down tighter than a miser's wallet, Senna confirmed. He'll do what we need. Then it's time to pay a visit to the council, Ivan said, cracking his knuckles once more. Let's see how they like their leverage reversed. President Mallory, looking slightly more alive than before, joined him at the comm station. I'll handle the talking. You all keep ready to back me up if necessary. Rix cracked his neck. I've been known to have an opinion or two. Understatement of the century, Leora muttered, still tapping away at her datapad. The council convened in the Dreamscape, a digital version of their opulent chamber, complete with marble floors and gold trim that screamed excess louder than a hornet in a tin can. As Ivan and his team logged in, they were greeted with expressions ranging from mild disdain to outright hostility. President Mallory, Councillor Zinn intoned, his voice a deep rumble like distant thunder. "I trust you have a good reason for interrupting our session." "Indeed I do," Mallory replied, her tone smooth as a glass of top-shelf bourbon. "It's come to our attention that one of your members has been, shall we say, moonlighting with Spectre." "Ridiculous," Zinn scoffed, but a flicker of doubt crossed his eyes. "Is it?" Mallory pressed, unfazed. "We've got enough evidence to cause quite a stir. Or maybe a purge. Do you really want to test us?" The chamber buzzed with whispers, the councillors exchanging glances as they recalibrated their positions. Varen, for his part, remained conspicuously silent, his gaze fixed firmly on some invisible point in front of him. "What do you propose?" Zinn asked, the question laced with grudging respect. "Simple," Mallory said, her smile ablaze. "Lift the sanctions. Let us deal with Spectre and secure Earth's future. Or we'll make sure your dealings become very public knowledge." Silence blanketed the chamber, thick and heavy as a winter fog. The councillors conferred in low voices, the occasional heated exchange punctuating the murmur like gunfire. Finally, Zinn spoke, his voice tight with reluctant concession. "Very well, the sanctions will be lifted. But know this. If you fail to deal with Spectre, the consequences will be dire." "Understood," Mallory replied, her tone all business. "We'll take it from here." As the Dreamscape session concluded, Ivan exhaled, the tension in his shoulders releasing like air from a punctured balloon. They had done it, they had turned the tide. "Looks like we bought ourselves some breathing room," Rix said, a grin spreading across his face. "Let's hope it's enough," Senna replied, her expression thoughtful. "Time will tell," Leora added, shutting down her datapad. "Time and a bit of luck." "Well, I don't know about you," Ivan said, chuckling, "but I've always been a fan of a little chaos." The team dispersed, the command center slowly returning to something resembling normalcy, the high of their victory tempered by the knowledge that the battle was far from over. But for now, they had momentum, and they intended to use it. "Drinks later," Rix suggested, his tone hopeful. "Definitely," Ivan agreed, clapping Rix on the shoulder. "Let's not waste a good opportunity to toast to our survival." And as the team went about their business, the future, uncertain as it was, seemed just a little bit brighter. Or as bright as it got in their part of the universe, anyway. Ivan stared at the holographic interface like it had just kicked his dog. The starships danced across it, angry fireflies in a jar, their roots twisting in ways that tickled the imagination if you were into chaos theory. "Sanctions lifted," Rix said, rolling the words around his mouth like a bitter lozenge. "Feels like we just got a get-out-of-jail-free card in a game of Monopoly where all the properties are mortgaged to hell." Ivan snorted. "Yeah, well, let's hope we don't end up in the poorhouse. Or a black hole. Either way, not my idea of a good time." Leora, nose deep in her datapad, flicked her eyes up. "These ships are half-rusted relics and the other half is barely spaceworthy. And there are reinforcements. Nothing like a little tetanus to spice up your space battles," Ivan quipped, tapping a finger on the console. "But it's a start. Now we just need to convince the rest of the galaxy we're not a bunch of spacefaring hobos." "Could be worse," Senna chimed in, inspecting her digital blade. "Could be no ships at all. Then it really would be just us, a tin can, and the infinite void." "You're an optimist, Senna." "It's sickening," Rick said, shaking his head. "Optimism's for the weak," Senna replied with a grin sharp enough to cut. "I prefer grim determination." Outside the command center, well, what passed for a command center on this side of the galaxy, the world moved on with the speed of a snail on a lazy Sunday. The Council, begrudgingly and not without a lot of internal grumbling, lifted the sanctions. Earth was open for business again, if you called scraping together what little they had left of business. President Mallory was on a comm link, likely sweet-talking some poor sap into giving him a deal on recycled parts. Her tone was the audio equivalent of sandpaper wrapped in velvet, smooth yet abrasive enough to get the job done. "Madam President," Ivan called over, "I trust negotiations are going well." "They're going," Mallory replied, her expression that of someone resigned to stepping into cow manure. "The galaxy's a big place, Ivan. We're small fish in a very big, very hungry pond. Let's just hope we're too bony to be worth eating," Ivan mused, leaning back in his chair. "Or too toxic," Rix added. "Either way works for me." With sanctions lifted, Earth had a tiny, flickering matchstick of hope. Not enough to start a fire, but maybe enough to keep the darkness at bay for a little while longer. "All right, team," Ivan said, "we've got a lot of work ahead. Let's make sure this doesn't end up as just a footnote in someone's poorly written history book." The team set to work, each member slipping into their roles like well-worn boots. Senna sharpened her digital blade, metaphorically speaking, while Leora dove into her datapad like it was the Holy Grail. Rix watched over the proceedings with the grumpy satisfaction of a cat who owned the room and everything in it. The council, meanwhile, played the delicate game of politics, trying to spin the situation so they came out smelling like roses instead of whatever it was they usually smelled like. Varen, now tightly leashed and neutered thanks to Senna's little house call, sat quietly through the proceedings, likely wishing he was anywhere but there. In the days that followed, Earth's leaders scrambled to rebuild alliances. They reached out, tendrils of diplomacy and desperation stretching across the stars. Each handshake was a gamble, each agreement a bet that maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't done for yet. Feels good to be back in the mix, Rix said, watching a new batch of ships come online. Even if we are, the underdogs in this cosmic dogfight. Underdogs bite the hardest, Ivan replied, arms crossed as he surveyed their burgeoning fleet. At least when they remember to brush their teeth. Or when they're rabid, Senna added, her grin back in place. Rabid's a good look for us, Rix acknowledged. Mad, desperate, maybe a little foamy at the mouth. Just the way I like my mornings, Leora deadpanned, not looking up from her screen. As Earth's leaders worked to strengthen alliances, there was an undertone of caution. Spectre's threat wasn't gone. He was out there, lurking like a bad smell in an otherwise clean room. But for now, the immediate danger had passed, and the people of Earth could focus on something other than the looming shadow of annihilation. Word is, some of the other planets are actually open to talking, Leora mentioned, scrolling through a wall of text that blurred into meaninglessness. Guess they finally noticed we're not quite as dead as they thought. Nothing like a good resurrection to get folks talking, Rix said. And here I thought nobody stayed dead, aside from us. Cheery thought, Ivan noted. But if talking gets us more ships, more resources, I'm all for it. Let's try not to scare 'em off with the smell of desperation. Or our hygiene, Rix added, sniffing the air dramatically. Hey, space showers are overrated, Senna said, flicking her digital blade on and off like a nervous tick. Who needs, M? Despite the sardonic jokes, there was a real determination beneath the banter. Earth's people were fighters, and they weren't about to lie down and let the galaxy roll over them like roadkill. President Mallory emerged from her negotiations looking like she'd been through a wind tunnel. We might have some trade agreements coming through, she announced, her voice barely masking the weariness. They're not the best terms, but it's a start. Better than a kick in the teeth, Ivan said. Or a boot up the backside. Both of which are still on the table, Mallory conceded. But for now, we have a bargaining chip. As the days turned into weeks, Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to rebuild. They repaired what they could, scrapped what they couldn't, and scrounged for every last piece of tech that might give them an edge or at least keep them afloat. Ships are patched up, Rix reported, his voice a mix of pride and disbelief. Might hold together long enough to reach the next port. Or until the next battle, Senna said, her tone suggesting she looked forward to the latter. Whichever comes first. Let's just hope we can afford some duct tape before then, Ivan replied, shaking his head at the state of their fleet. Through it all, the team kept their sense of humor. Dark, twisted, and occasionally bordering on the macabre, but human nonetheless. It kept them grounded, kept them sane in a galaxy that seemed hell-bent on driving them mad. Hey, at least we have each other, Leora pointed out, her tone sincere despite the sarcasm. Misery loves company, right? Right, Ivan agreed, and we're the best company money can't buy. As Earth's leaders continued to strengthen alliances, Ivan found himself reflecting on their progress. It was a start, far from perfect, but it was theirs. Humanity had always been scrappy, a species defined by its resilience. They thrived on adversity, wore their scars like badges of honor. For all the crap we've been through, Rix mused, humans are stubborn bastards. We just don't know when to quit. Quitting's for other species, Ivan said, a smile tugging at his lips. We keep going until the wheels fall off or the universe gives up on trying to kill us. Here's hoping for the latter, Senna said, flipping her blade around lazily. As the galaxy slowly warmed to the idea of Earth as a viable partner, Ivan couldn't help but feel a twinge of pride. They'd come a long way from the edge of extinction, clawed their way back from the brink. And though the road ahead was fraught with peril, and Spectre was still out there, waiting, they knew they could face it. To the future, Ivan said, raising an imaginary glass in a toast. May it be slightly less murderous than the past. The team joined in, echoing the sentiment with a mix of hope and pragmatism. They knew better than to expect a fairy tale ending, but they had each other and a shared goal. And sometimes, that was enough. As the command center buzzed with the renewed energy of a world rebuilding, Ivan felt a flicker of optimism. Not the blind kind, the kind that usually gets you killed, but the kind that fuels action and breeds resilience. The kind that turns underdogs into champions. The galaxy might be vast and indifferent, but for now, Earth had a fighting chance. And that was worth more than any council's sanction, worth the sweat and struggle they'd all put in to get this far. Let's get to work, Ivan said, nodding at the team. We've got a universe to surprise. As they dispersed, settling back into their tasks with renewed focus, the future seemed just a bit more promising. There would be challenges, no doubt, and Spectre still loomed in the shadows, but humanity was ready. Ready to fight, ready to endure, ready to defy the odds one more time. And as Ivan watched his team, he knew they were far from done. Not by a long shot. They had allies to find, deals to broker, and a galaxy to remind why Earth was not to be underestimated. They'd claw their way to the top, laughing in the face of danger, snarking at fate itself. Because that's what humans did best. They survived, they thrived, and they did it all with a wink and a middle finger to the universe.